Hey everyone! Today we're going to build our own HTTP server. If you've watched the channel before, you know that we're all about doing hands-on work here. And for this video, I'm actually going to be using a platform that's all about learning by doing, and that's CodeCrafters. So they reached out to me, asked me to give this a try and see what I thought. I went through 2 of their challenges. Overall, I was really impressed, and I think if you're a developer, especially somebody wanting to improve your networking or systems knowledge, you're really going to like this. I do have an affiliate link in the description. You can try it out for free. Decide for yourself. If you do decide to sign up, I would super appreciate the support from using that link. But that said, I will be giving you my unbiased review as we go along and keep things real. So this is a page that you'll see once you're logged in. Just going to their public page, so codecrafters.io, you'll see practice writing complex software, different tools and technologies that we build from scratch. I'll just scroll down a little bit here, kind of get a feel for what it's all about. But their tagline is programming challenges for seasoned developers. So you are going to have to know things like get and how to use a curl command and the basics of the language that you're using. This is very much learning by doing. There are not going to be step-by-step instructions for everything. That said, the challenges that I did building an HTTP server and building a DNS server, I was very much a beginner on those. I had never done anything like that. And I learned a ton just from struggling through and kind of figuring things out. So it's very real world as far as that goes. And I think if you go into it kind of with that mindset, that will be really helpful. All right, but back to the catalog here. You'll see the challenges. So build your own X, various developer tools and technology here. You can also go by the language tracks. So if you're interested in Rust, for example, you can check out all the different challenges that are available in Rust. So building your own BitTorrent, build your own Redis, and so on. So a few different ways you can choose what to do. Back to the catalog. We're going to be working on this one, build your own HTTP server. Now I did do this one before. Let me just click into it. Challenge complete. Excellent. I'm going to restart this though. So up here, retry using Python. Now, because I already did this one, I've got the code figured out and whatnot. I'm not going to make you watch me struggle through doing all of that again. That would be pretty painful. But we're going to go through the challenge. I will point out various features as we go and some of the gotchas that happened to me in case you get something similar if you decide to try it. All right, introduction. Build your own HTTP server. Tells you a little bit more about the protocol, things you're going to learn, TCP connections, HTTP headers, and so on. And then you'll pick your preferred language. So this one is available in quite a few different languages. I was doing Python, so I'll stick with that. And then scrolling down, choose your language proficiency. So how much experience do you have? You can choose what you want. I went with beginner on this one, just to kind of see what the starting point was. There are various code examples that you can look at as you go, and we'll see those a little bit later. Practice, cadence. How often are you planning to practice? I said a few times a week. And then as far as accountability, if you want CodeCrafters to send you an email with some nudges occasionally, you can do that. I said that I'll pass. And that's basically it for this step, getting things set up. All right, moving on to the next step. Now you need to set up your repository. So all of this runs through GitHub. You'll be checking in your code. It tests your code when you check it in and so on. So you need to clone the repository, and then you're going to push just an empty commit just to make sure everything's working. I'm going to be working in Visual Studio Code and just do all of this from the terminal there. So let me get that opened up, and I will put these side by side on my screen. Okay, to give us more real estate, there is a leaderboard over here that you can collapse, which is nice to give you more space. But you'll find that as you're going through the different stages, that you get bumped up the leaderboard. So this was from the one that I did earlier, 8 out of 8 stages completed. But you can keep an eye on that, kind of fun. But let's get that out of the way and clone the repository. So I'll copy this. Now I did notice in a few places that there are commands that are not friendly if you're on a Windows machine, which I am. I think I'm probably in the minority here, but the double ampersand here, for example, doesn't work on Windows. So we'll have to do these as 2 separate commands, but let's clone the repository. And then I'll do a CD into that folder. Okay, easy peasy. Now we need to push an empty commit just to make sure everything is working. So I'll copy this. And then over here, I'll just do this first part, the commit, and then the actual push. And you'll see on the left that it's listening for a git push. So once I hit enter here, CodeCrafters will pick up this push, let me know if everything worked, and then we can move on. Okay, we've completed the step, yay. There are some instructions and different things that come back here in your output. We'll look at those more for some of the future stages, but for this one, we're good to go. The git push went through, and so now we're able to actually start on the first stage. So let's continue on over here. And you'll actually see a message about that test failed. That's expected on the first git push that you do. Right now we're in stage 1, and this is actually going to test our code. So with this one, we will need to pass the test. The task for this stage is to start a TCP server on port 4221. This one is pretty simple, and it gets you started with some starter code. Things do get more challenging as you go along, but this one's pretty easy as well. Basically, we just need to take the starter code, uncomment parts of it, check it in, and then we're good to go. So this one, again, is just kind of making sure that everything works, that you can update your code, that you can check it in, and that kind of thing. So we'll need to make those updates and then do a commit and a push. So over here in VS Code, I will go open up the code files that we just cloned down to the local machine. You don't have to use Visual Studio Code. If you get another editor that you like, feel free to use that. Okay, and for this challenge, our code is under app and then main.py. At least for Python, if you're using a different language, obviously your files will be different. But this is the file that I'm going to be working in. And we need to uncomment some things. So let's uncomment my import statement. It's telling us how we can do some print statements for debugging. We'll uncomment this. And this is basically where we're setting up our server here. We're using localhost 4221. Now, reuse port doesn't actually work on my system either. So I'll get rid of that. I found that out as I was going along previously. So there are some things, depending on your OS, that you might need to change. But that should be all we need to do for this one. I'll save the file. And then we need to submit our changes. So let me bring up a terminal again. We'll do a git add period, the git commit, and then the message. You don't have to type in the exact message that it uses here. It's not testing for that. But there's our commit, and then the actual git push. Okay, excellent. So over here in the output, you'll see that it's run tests for stage 1 and the different steps it's going through. So binding to a port, connecting to localhost 4221. We've got the print statement and everything passed. So yay. Over here, it looks like we've got lots of green as well. So we can move on to the next stage. So that was stage 1 of 8. Like I said, they do get more challenging, but at this point, hopefully you're comfortable with the setup, how to make updates, how to push them through Git and so forth. So let's go to the next stage. And we get confetti, which is everything. Okay. In this next stage, we're actually going to start building some more functionality. We need to respond with a 200 response. And you will see a message up here as well. If you want to run your tests without Git, without checking them in, you can install the CodeCrafters CLI, run your tests locally. I did try that. It's pretty straightforward. To move to the next stage, though, you will need to check things in. So at some point, you do need to work with Git. But check out the CLI if you want to run them without Git. Okay, our task for this stage. So we'll need to respond to an HTTP request with a 200 OK response. You'll see the requirements here. And then throughout the different challenges, some of them have links to go learn more. So if you want to learn more about the HTTP status line, for example, this will take you out to the Mozilla docs. And there's other links in here as well. So these are really helpful to learn the underlying concepts of how all of this works. Again, very real world, where you just kind of have to figure things out. Okay, so here's what the program needs to do. It's okay to ignore the data received from the connection. We'll parse it in later stages, and so on. And then moving down to how to pass this stage. So things are not going to be as prescriptive as they were in the previous stages here. We don't have starter code, and we don't have step-by-step instructions. Instead, what we have are the code examples. So you can click here, or you can always just scroll up to the top and look at the code examples. So these are files from other people who've successfully passed the test. This one is actually mine from when I did this before, but you can expand the examples here and just see what other people have done. You can also look at the comment here. So this is the CodeCrafters bot that basically explains the code. The code starts by creating a server socket and so on and so forth. And there's different comments. Depending on how much code you have, there'll be a lot of comments sometimes. You can also expand additional lines, collapse the example, and so on. So go through and kind of get some ideas here. There is no one correct way to do any of these. So if you're looking for the quote-unquote right solution, that just doesn't exist. Again, very real world. There's lots of different ways to do things in code. But you can look at some examples here if you're stuck or if you just need to know how to get started, basically, and then write your own code. So back to our instructions here. I did write the code for this one. Like I said, I have been through this one before. So over here in Visual Studio, I'm just going to paste that code in so you don't have to watch me write it all out here. Okay, here's my updated code. We're reading data from the client. We're going to send a 200 OK response. The rest is pretty much what we had before with a few new lines of code. Okay, now we will need to submit these changes. So same steps down here. We're going to do the git, add, commit, and push. And here I'm going to say pass second stage. And then the actual push. CodeCrafters is listening for a git push over here on the left. Running our tests. Everything passed. Excellent. Okay, so that one wasn't too bad. Let's go to the next stage. On this one, we need to respond with a 404. So we've already responded with a 200 OK. This one is to handle the 404 case. We need to extract the path from the HTTP request. Here's what the request will look like. And once again, some links. So we've got the start line, we've got the HTTP method, we've got the path, and we've got the HTTP version. So you can click on those links to learn more about any of these, how we're separating the new lines, and so on. So again, I won't go through all of this, but how you know it's working is if we submit a path of just a slash, we should respond to the 200 OK. Otherwise, we'll respond with a 404. And on some of these, there are going to be hints down here as well about how you could test this locally. So we're going to need to do that. I'll copy in the code that I came up with previously, and then we'll go test it out. All right, so here's my new code. I'm handling the 200 OK and the 404. And then I'm going to open up a new command line, and we're going to submit the curl request to test this out. First thing we need to do, though, is in our Python app over here is start the server. So run the app, basically. This is under the app folder, so I'll do a cd into the app folder, and then Python main.py. So server's running on port 4221, waiting for connection, which is what we're going to send over here with the curl command. I'm just going to copy what we have here in the hints. We're submitting a GET request to localhost index.html. And if we read up again here, if the path is just a slash, we should respond with a 200. Otherwise, we should respond with a 404. So in this case, index.html should give us a 404. Let's see what we get. Okay, perfect. That's working. And then if we just do the slash, this should give us the 200 OK. And it works. Excellent. Okay, cool. So we should be able to submit this. There aren't specific steps for that in this one, the different git commands, but I know how to do that. So we'll do the git add, the git commit. Here we're up to the third stage. And then the git push. Okay, running tests. And I want to point out that it runs all of the previous tests as well. That took me a little while to realize that every time you do your git push, it's going to run the whole suite of tests from the previous stages as well. So you want to make sure that you're not getting rid of functionality that you built previously. You're building onto the functionality, not replacing it with each stage. So just FYI, but it looks like all of my previous tests are still passing, which is perfect. And this one passed as well. So we can go to the next stage, stage 4. All right, previously we were just responding with the status code. Now we need to actually respond with some content and instructions on what to do. Parse the path. The test will send in a random string in the URL path. Like the form here, we need to respond with the 200 OK. We should have a content type of text/plain, and so on. Here's an example of what your program should send back, and a link to go learn more in the MDN docs. Also some hints down here of how you could test this. or just gotchas or things that people came across, errors that might have happened that other people could benefit from knowing. And then as always, you've got your code examples. So you can come back here, kind of look through what other people have done and give it a go. So once again, I'm going to paste in the code that I figured out previously. And then let's do our test. So I'll start up the server, cd into app, Python, main.py, and then using the hint over here, the curl command, and this should return something like this. So the 200 OK, the content type, and the content length. And that worked. Excellent. Okay, let's check in our code and continue. This is the fourth stage. We're moving right along. And then the git push. Over here, it's listening for the push, running the tests, and test passed. Yay! All right, at this point, hopefully you get the idea of how you work through the different stages. Look at your hints, look at your code examples, do some testing, check your code in, and that's basically what the rest of the stages do as well. You're just adding additional functionality. So I'm going to speed up a little bit here. In this stage 5, we need to parse the HTTP request headers. So we might receive something like this, and here's what we need to respond with. I'll update that code, and then I'll run the server with my Python main.py. For this one, to test, let's see if there's any hints. So similar curl, here we do need to say /user agent, similar to how we've got that instruction up here. So rather than the echo and the ABC, user agent, we've responded with the 200 OK, the content type, and the content length. So perfect. All right, let's check in the code. We're up to the 5th stage. And git push. It should run our tests. And success. Excellent. Moving on to the next stage. In this one, the server needs to handle multiple concurrent connections. So we'll need to do some threading, and then testing this one's also going to be a little bit different. So I'll walk you through what I did. I'll update my code. And just to briefly walk you through some of the changes, we're importing threading up at the top now. And then down here, we've added the while true threading.thread, and that's calling the client thread up here. So handling multiple threads. Now for this one to test, if you move down to the hints here, this will depend on your operating system. There's a couple suggestions in here. I'm on Windows, so I ended up going with this one using NCAT. You can try some of these other suggestions here as well if you're on a Mac. But let me open that up. So NCAT is just an exe that I'm going to run. But first we need to start up the server over here. Python main.py. So it's running, ready to accept connections. So over here I can say NCAT localhost and 4221. And that will establish a connection. So that's one connection we've got going. I'm going to open up another command prompt. And here we're just going to use our regular old curl command that we've been using. So curl localhost 4221 to establish a second connection. And then over here, you'll see that we've got 2 connections going, and it's handling it just fine. Perfect. All right, so we should be good to go. Let me submit my changes. We're on the 6th stage now. And git push. Running all of our tests again. And they passed. Excellent work. Okay, next stage. Okay, we're up to stage 7. In this one, we need to return the contents of a file. The test will execute with a -- directory flag, and then send in a request, a get /files/file name. So let me open up my local folder for this. This is my local repo, basically. So inside of app, this is where your main.py file lives. You want to create a folder called files. And then inside of there, add whatever files you want. I've just got a simple hello.txt file. You will want some contents inside of them. So hello, and then index.html. And this just has some simple HTML code in it. So make sure the files exist. And then over here, we'll cd into app, Python main.py, and then we need to have that flag for directory. So -- directory, and then the name of the directory or the folder, which was files. So server's waiting, and then back to the command prompt, our curl command, get localhost /files/index.html or whatever file you've got, and this should come back with the contents of that file. And there we go. There's our HTML code. And then for the other one, I had a hello.txt that said hello in it. We're getting all of that back. We're getting back the 200 OK, the content type, the content length, and the contents of the file. Nice work. Okay, let's check in our code. Git add, git commit. We're on the 7th stage now, almost done. And then git push. Let's see how we did. So make sure that your previous tests all still pass, that you're not requiring that -- directory flag. Cool. All right, moving on to the last stage. Now we need to accept posting a file, so creating a file instead of just getting it. You've got the instructions here. We'll send a request of post and then /files and the file name. So something like files/readme.txt or something like that, and that should get written into your local directory. Okay, I'll update the code for this. Up here I've added an if method equals post. So previously we were just dealing with gets, but make sure that you've handled that. Let's run the application. Here again, you will need the -- directory flag, files, and then to test this one out, let's see if there are any hints down on the bottom. There are. So this one is doing a readme.txt. This is the file that we'll create. I'll just copy this, paste that in. It looks like we've got a 201 created response just coming from our code over here, so that looks good. Let's go check our local folder and see if that got created. And it looks like it did. Created just now, readme. And inside there should be a hello world. Perfect. All right, let's check in our code and wrap things up. Git add, passing the 8th stage, and then a final push. Rerunning all of the tests. And completed. Tests passed. Awesome. All right, so scrolling down here, we've completed all of this. Let's go to the next step. And challenge complete. Yay! So only about 10% of users attempt this and end up completing all stages. You're one of them. Congratulations. So suggested things to do next: polish up your code. Like I mentioned in the beginning, there's obviously no one correct way to do things. So you might want to try different approaches, refactor your code. I haven't made my code available for download because, again, there's no one correct way. Check out the different code examples from what other people have done, test it out, see that it works, that kind of thing. You can also share all of this with the world by publishing to GitHub if you want. Or again, try a different approach. So excellent work. I hope you were able to follow along, writing your own code, and just have a better feel for how the CodeCrafters platform works. If you think this would be useful to you, again, there's a link in the description. And with that, let's wrap up. Thanks so much for watching.